Hello, everybody. This is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Hope you're all doing well. Wanted to come on today and go through my predictions for who will make the 49ers 53-man roster on the defensive side. We did the offensive side a couple weeks ago. Now it's time to take a look at the defensive side, especially with training camp opening up on Tuesday with the players reporting to Santa Clara on Tuesday. First practice will be coming up on Wednesday. Perfect time to be taking a look at this. And we're going to get the show started with the defensive side of the ball. The 49ers, their roster stocked with talent throughout. No place more so, really, probably than the defensive line. I think you look at the 49ers defensive line and you look at the players that are in that room right now, and it's going to be extremely difficult for that group to cut down to 10, 11 players on the final roster. It's going to be quite a challenge for D'Amico Ryans, Chris Kasarik, the defensive line coach, and even Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch on how they want to go ahead and break this thing down. So it's going to be really interesting. That defensive line led by Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead. The 49ers are returning 3 of the 4 starting defensive linemen who helped really spur the turnaround over the second half of last season that helped them finish second in sacks per game with an average of 3. Samson Ebukam is the third that I think will be joining Bosa and Armstead in that starting lineup. A free agent acquisition from the Los Angeles Rams. Ebukam came on strong once he was moved into the starting lineup around the midpoint of last season. In particular, you could see it really starting around the Chicago Bears game last year. And Ebukam gives San Francisco's defense the speed rusher opposite Bosa that they really want to have in there. It's similar to what they have with Dee Ford. And we're going to get into some of the others that they might be bringing in as well, starting right here. After losing DJ Jones and Arden Key during free agency, San Francisco went out. They added several veterans on one-year contracts through free agency, guys such as Kerry Hyder, Hassan Ridgeway, and Kamoko Toure. Each are veterans who bring a history of being productive to the 49ers. Really, when you look at Hyder, Ridgeway, and Toure, the thing that they bring more than anything is their ability to get after the quarterback. And with the 49ers schedule that they have going into this year, being able to get after the quarterback is going to be a big piece of that. And San Francisco didn't just stop there, though. They also went out and selected defensive end Drake Jackson with their first pick at the end of round 2. That was their first pick in the draft. And with the talent in front of him, in front of Jackson, I don't know if Jackson's going to get very many snaps. He's likely going to be a little more than a role player as a rookie. I would, if he's getting 10 to 15 snaps per game, I think that might be a little bit on the high side. So we'll see how that plays out with that defensive line group. Some of the question marks, you've got the health of Javon Kinlaw. I think that's the first one. And it's a big one because Kinlaw is going to have to try to replace DJ Jones along the interior. The 2020 first-round draft pick must prove that he can stay healthy. That's the big thing here. He's got to be healthy. He hasn't been able to do that yet. He's missed parts of both of the seasons with the Niners due to knee injuries. The final 2 games of the rookie season, if you remember, he suffered an injury against Dallas there in Week 15. He only played 149 snaps last season before going to injury reserve. The good thing is the 49ers feel confident with the changes that they've made to his knee. Kinlaw underwent an ACL reconstruction during the latter half of last season, and he's been working his way back. He spent a lot of time working with the same group of doctors and rehab team that worked with Nick Bosa during his recovery from his surgery the year prior. So, a healthy Kinlaw is going to go a long way to solidifying the middle of the 49ers defensive line. Kinlaw not quite as good against the run as DJ Jones. However, he's going to be more productive as a pass rusher. So we'll see how that plays out. That's going to be critical for their success is to be able to get after the passer. Kinlaw needs to be healthy, I think, for that to happen. And then the second one there is, how about, Eric Armstead? That's another question, too. Is he going to be staying inside? The 49ers haven't made any kind of announcement that he will be inside or outside. But staying inside with Armstead is really where he's best at. He's a versatile player. He can play inside and out, but he's much better when he's on the inside. He's not only is he like last year, if we go back to it, when they moved him inside full time last year around week 7, that's when the 49ers pass rush started to become a force. He moved inside. Samson Ebukam stepped in at the end position, and all of a sudden the pass rush got better. Armstead's productivity, though, isn't limited only to the inside. He's not bad as an outside pass rusher, but when he's on the inside, he's not that bad against the run either. He can actually hold the zone. He's strong, athletic, usually he has a good job. That athleticism really helps him out against those interior offensive linemen, those guards. So Armstead works out really well in there by keeping Armstead inside. Opposing offenses have to focus on Armstead on the inside and Bosa on the outside, and that kind of gives them the ability to free up the other two pass rushers for one-on-one opportunities, such as Kinlaw, again, like we mentioned, or Ebukam or Kemoko Turay, whichever one of those is on the other side of Nick Bosa. So taking a look at all that, taking all that into consideration, and everybody that's on the roster currently, my 53-man roster projection for the defensive line is I have them right now taking 10. If you go back and you watch the offensive video, there was 25 total players there. There's going to be 25 total defensive players as well. It's going to be kind of balanced out this year. And I have Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, and Samson Ebukam. Those four are the starters. They make the roster, including the backups are going to be Kerry Hyder, Hassan Ridgeway, who is a good interior player, Kemoko Turay off the edge, Charles Omenihu, who I expect to be the inside rusher that's going to be pairing with Eric Armstead, or either it could be Armstead, or it also could be, based off the way they did it last year, it could be with Javon Kinlaw at times. Then you'll have Drake Jackson. He's going to make the team. He's the second-round draft pick. He'll be there. And then the last position goes to Kevin Givens. You need to have that interior presence, and he's again a solid interior player, especially as a role player. And Givens is really good on the pass rush. So that's who I have making the 53-man roster. On the defensive line, we have, once again, just going through it. Should have had this up earlier, but just going through it. My prediction for the defensive line: Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, Samson Ebukam, Kerry Hyder, Hassan Ridgeway, Kemoko Turay, Charles Omenihu, Drake Jackson, and Kevin Givens. Those are the 10 defensive linemen who are going to make it out of camp as your starters. Looking at the comments really quick before I move on, I just want to throw up a couple of names. We have Raphael 5629ers is in the house. He's a member of the Toolbox. And he says, "What's up, Jack and everybody? Good to have you on board, Raphael. Good to have you on here. Good to see you today." And then we also have our friend Double B Studio. It says, "Sup, Jack? Good to have you on too, Double B." And then last but not least, CJ Ruthless. "What's your thoughts on Maurice Hurst Jr.?" I think he's a good player. He's a guy who had a lot of hope behind him when he was drafted by the Raiders. It just hasn't really projected out yet. He just hasn't hit his own. He's definitely going to be in the mix for a position this year. I think if Kevin Givens doesn't make it, that's where Maurice Hurst Jr. fills in. Behind, when you look at the 49ers defensive roster, Nick Bosa signed beyond this year. Eric Armstead signed beyond this year. Javon Kinlaw signed beyond this year. After that, I think the only other guy that signed beyond 2022 is Drake Jackson. So, that's where, those end spots on the roster, I don't think you have to worry about those going to guys that are just because of draft picks. And then, I didn't even mention on here the other rookie that they drafted. He's on the, he'll be on the roster. I think he'll be on the practice squad. Not on the practice squad, on the physically unable to perform list. So I think that's what's going to happen. And Kevin Atkins was the undrafted rookie free agent. Don't see him making it to a need to necessarily stash him on IR. I think he's the guy they try to bring over to the practice squad. And we also have Frederick Cooper. He jumps in and says hello as well. So that is what it looks like on the defensive line. Let's take a look at the linebacker crew now. At the linebacker spot, that's an interesting one. They have Azeez Al-Shaair, Oren Burks, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner. All those guys are coming back. Actually, Oren Burks is the new guy on the block, but Al-Shaair, Fowles, Greenlaw, and Warner are all coming back. And then they have a group of rookie free agents that are undrafted free agents and so on that they brought in this offseason. This group, it's easy to look at this off at the defensive linebackers for the 49ers. That's one of the best linebacker crews in all of the NFL, right? You have Fred Warner. He actually finished 2021 with a career high 137 tackles. Dre Greenlaw, he was out due to a groin injury throughout most of the season, which allowed Azeez Al-Shaair to step into the starting lineup. And he had just had a phenomenal season, Al-Shaair did. He started 13 games, racked up 102 tackles, 9 for loss, 2 sacks, 5 pass breakups, an interception, a forced fumble, a couple of fumble recoveries. And he just had a great year. I think he'll start in the base defense, and he's going to compete with Greenlaw for those snaps alongside Warner when the Flyers get into their nickel set. he's a really good player. It's going to be interesting to see who wins that battle. That's going to be something to keep an eye on in training camp. Is actually who lines up alongside of Warner when they go into the nickel slot, their nickel sets. And then on the other piece there is that they added Oren Burks during free agency. Burks' primary role with the Flyers is going to be on special teams. That's really where they're looking for improvement, and they brought him over to primarily be a special teamer. But he was a third-round draft pick of the Packers in 2018. Started 3 games last season for them. Finished last year with a career high of 36 tackles as well. So Oren Burks is the guy they brought over. He's going to be a nice role player. I don't expect to see him in the starting lineup, but he's a guy that's going to be a big-time special teams contributor and can really step in and play that Sam linebacker role, similar to like a Mark Nazacha type of a position there. If you remember Mark Nazacha, he was the guy that the Flyers had in that Sam role in 2017. He played a few snaps there, but was primarily used as a special teams guy. They even brought him back last year for the special teams. So that's where you see him. 3 of the 49ers 4 linebackers, though, when you look at this season, they have health concerns that are in training camp. It's going to be worth monitoring those. You have Dre Greenlaw, who was of the 3 is probably the least that you need to worry about. He was sidelined for 15 games throughout the first 17 weeks last season. He had a groin injury week 1, which required surgery. He was able to come back and start the game against Minnesota, re-injured it a little bit, tweaked it, sat out for a while, but then was able to come back, start the regular season finale in Los Angeles against the Rams, and then he started all 3 games for the 49ers during their playoff run. So Dre Greenlaw of the 3 is probably the least that you need to worry about. But his replacement last year, Al-Shaair, that we talked about earlier, he's dealing with his own health issues. He had knee and shoulder surgery over the offseason. He played through the injuries last year, but he was held out of OTAs and minicamp. Same thing with Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles. He missed OTAs and minicamp. He's used to be a safety in college, transitioned over to linebacker. He was held out of practice trying to manage some knee tendonitis that he had. He suffered the knee injury during the first half of the championship game down against the Rams. He missed the remainder of the game after that. So that's kind of where we are with the linebacker crew. But this one, I think, is pretty well set as far as who's going to make the roster and who's not. Unless there's a trade for one of these guys, these 5 are going to make it for the 49ers. You have Fred Warner, obviously. All-Pro Fred's going to make the squad. I think Dre Greenlaw, he's the one that most people would kind of associate with being picked off as a trade partner, trade bait. Azeez Al-Shaair and Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, there's your first 4. And then the 5th is Oren Burks. With Burks, he just provides some more depth there at that linebacker spot, but he makes it primarily because of his special teams role. So we'll see how that works out. That is the linebacker. So if I go through that one more time, on the linebacker side, the 5 linebackers that make it for the 49ers are going to be Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Azeez Al-Shaair, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, and Oren Burks. Got a super chat. Want to hit that up really quick. We have Double B Studio. Thank you very much for the donation. He says, what are your thoughts on the O-line? Could they pull off with what's there, or do you think they wait for a center to free up somehow? Well, I think you're going to see them start by trying to pull it off with what's there. There's not a whole lot out there right now on the market. I know J.C. Treader is the name that everybody talks about when it comes to the 49ers. So we'll see if he is a decision that the 49ers want to go after a player like that. The only question with J.C. Treader, if you look at him, he was extremely productive last season with Cleveland, one of the better tight ends in the game. Centers in the game. The problem with Treader, though, is that he doesn't practice. And so I'm not sure if that really fits what the 49ers are looking for, if they're going to be willing to move forward with a guy who can't suit up every day at practice or for most days of practice. And it's just a game player. So that's the one question there with Treader. But I think first and foremost, they're going to try to roll forward with what they have. They've talked highly of Jake Brendel. Daniel Brunskill is the guy who's on their roster who I think can play center at a decent level. I think they have enough on their roster. They might feel like they have enough on their roster to get through. So I'd be a little surprised to see them make any kind of a move at that position. Definitely not going to happen until they make a change with a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, if they do move off of Garoppolo or lower his cap at whatever they decide to do there. They don't have the money. The first line of business is trying to get Deebo Samuel done, and money that they have is going to go towards Deebo's contract. Let's see. Frederick asks me, who do you think starts at slot corner? We're going to get there in just a second. And then Kim asks, who do you see as the starting offensive line? Also, do you see Nkemdiche as someone who spells Kinlaw? The starting offensive line, the way that I see it, is going to be Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, Daniel Brunskill, and Mike McGlinchey. That's what's the way that I see that starting lineup. The only way that changes, everything gets shuffled up if they decide to move off of Brendel and they don't bring somebody in. Because the only way they move off of Brendel, I think, is if it's for Brunskill. I don't think Keaton Sutherland's going to be beating him out to be the starter at that position. So if you have Brunskill at center, it opens up right guard, who then becomes either Jalen Moore or Spencer Burford. Probably Jalen Moore first, and then Spencer Burford backing him up. So that's the way that I see the O-line shaking out. So let's move on, and let's switch over to the cornerbacks. I had the question come up on who I think starts at the slot. So let's get into the cornerbacks a little bit. The 49ers' lone splash signing throughout training camp was the addition of Charvarius Ward. He was a Super Bowl champion during his time in Kansas City. 49er fans probably don't like to hear that, since it was against the 49ers when he did that. And he's coming off a season in which he allowed only a completion percentage of 51. And the passer rating into his coverage was only 79.4. So it was a really strong year last season for Charvarius Ward. And he provides something that 49ers really were missing throughout last year, which is that ability to shut down opposing receivers in man coverage. They really struggled with that. As a result, they played a lot of off coverage to try to keep the receivers in front of them. Because when they get beat and chase them down, that's when those long pass interference penalties would come into play and those types of things. So I think with this addition, they're able to tighten that up quite a bit. D'Amico Ryan's secondary is going to be able to become more aggressive. The tighter coverage will lead to more opportunities for Bosa, pass rush to get to the quarterback. And then along with that, if you're able to play tighter coverage, that's when balls start getting tipped and batted around. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're ending up with more interceptions. So the tight coverage from Ward really is going to, I think, if he's able to be the player the 49ers are expecting, is going to have a ripple effect across the roster, the secondary, and the way that this thing plays. As far as the question marks in the secondary at the cornerback spot, I think the only real question, two of them. One, what happens with Jason Verrett? Does he make the roster? How do they try to manage him? When you look at Jason Verrett, when you look back at him, he was great in 2020. He's a really good cornerback, but the problem is he's just usually never healthy. When he is healthy, though, he's one of the best corners in the league. He's right up there. They're able to bring him back. He signed a vet minimum contract of just over $1 million, but because of some of the salary cap rules, it only cost the 49ers $895,000 to have him on the roster for this season. So that's nice. And then moving on. So here's the reason why it's a question with Jason Verrett. If he starts, what happens everywhere else? Because we already know Ward's one guy. They also have Emmanuel Mosley. If Jason Verrett starts at one spot, the side opposite of Ward, now all of a sudden, where does Mosley go? Who's playing in the slot? All those types of things. So let's take a look at how that Nichols. I had the question just a minute ago about the Nichols. Who's going to start there? The reason it's a question is because they lost K'Waun Williams. The first man up is going to be Darqueze Dennard. He's the first. When we take a look at who's going to start at slot corner, it's going to be Darqueze Dennard is going to be the first guy. And really, in a lot of ways, Dennard looks like he fits the part. He was the first man up at that spot throughout OTAs and minicamp. When you look at Dennard, this is a guy who was a first-round draft pick for Cincinnati in 2014. He was actually selected ahead of Jimmy Ward in the 2014 draft. He joined the 49ers late last season, ended up making it onto the field in Week 18 against the Rams. He actually played in the slot for the second half of that game. If you remember, Dante Johnson started that game in the slot, and then because of injuries, he had to slide back to safety. And then when he slid back to safety, you had Dennard slide into the slot role. played really well, and the 49ers were able to get the victory and go into the playoffs. So I think Denard's the first guy up, and he would be my prediction because of his size, his physicality, his ability to, I think, to play the run. He looks like he's really comfortable in he can hold his own in man coverage. He's comfortable in zone, and he's going to be able to fit just fine in the run game too and run support. So I think it's going to be Denard who'll start at nickel, but he's going to get pressure from Sam Womack, the rookie that the 49ers drafted in the 5th round out of Akron. He's, when it comes to Sam Womack, this is a guy who really has the ability to he's a really good cover guy. You can see him tight coverage, really good with his hands, ability to turn and run with these receivers. So he looks really good when it comes to that. The question that I have with Womack is he needs to improve his zone coverage. He was really good at Akron in zone coverage, but he was playing on the outside, so he didn't have to worry about the whole field, right? Because you have the sidelines as a helper on one side of you. When you're playing in the nickel, now you have both sides, and you've got to be able to have a little bit more of a feel for it. I don't know if he's there quite yet, and then I don't know if he's going to be strong enough in run support right away. I think he might take a year, maybe 2, to build up his body to be able to take a pounding of stopping the run inside as a nickel. So we'll see how that works out. But I really do like Sam Womack, and I think he's going to push at that position. Another thing to think about too is depending on what happens with Jason Verrett, maybe it's Emmanuel Moseley. Maybe it doesn't even have anything to do with Verrett, but it still could be Moseley. The 49ers, in the past when Jim Harbaugh was here, they had Carlos Rogers would start on the outside, and then he'd slide inside, and they brought in Chris Culver, I believe it was, to play on the outside, and that's what they used in 2011 and 2012 was Carlos Rogers starting the outside, sliding into the nickel, and they bring a guy off the bench. And I could see that possibly happening as well with the 49ers. If they want to have Moseley be that nickel guy, they can do that with Ambry Thomas coming in and playing on the outside. Thomas got a bunch of starts last year, did a decent job for him down the stretch. So that'd be another one as well in there. And the other names to think about that are going to be mixed in this mix are going to be Diamondre Lenoir, draft pick from last year, Quantrez Knight, who is more of a safety candidate, but can play down in the slot as well. And then you have Dante Johnson. So I think the way that this thing works out is the 49ers are going to have 53 men on their 53-man roster. I think they're going to have 7 cornerbacks. They're going to make it. Those 7 are going to be Travis Ward, Emmanuel Moseley, Ambry Thomas, Diamondre Lenoir, and Tariq Castro-Fields and Darqueze Dennard, along with Sam Womack as well. And Jason Verrett starting the season on the PUP list, Dante Johnson on the practice squad. Just with I think they're going to try to keep Castro-Fields on the roster and Womack. The only one there that I'm a little skeptical on if I was going to pull one of those off would be Diamondre Lenoir. He struggles on the outside. I'm not sure how good he's going to be on the inside, but because he was a draft pick last year in the 5th round, that's why I haven't making it again this year. He was actually just kind of a funny thing. He was actually Diamondre Lenoir and Sam Womack were drafted in the same round at precisely the same spot in back-to-back years. I think Womack's a better corner of the two. We'll see how that plays out during training camp as that goes through. All right, let me see really quick what I've got going on over here. Ekim asks me, do you see McGlinchey starting on PUP to start the season with his quadricep tear? I don't. I think he's going to ramp up. But as far as the regular season goes, no. Mike McGlinchey, I think, will be the starter at right tackle. If he's not, that's going to be that'll be a big issue for the 49ers, I think, with who starts over there at right tackle. I think it'd be Jalen Moore more than likely, and Jalen, or it's going to either be Jalen Moore or Justin School would be my guess if McGlinchey doesn't make it. Mike Pelton asks which running back takes the first carry this season. That's going to be Elijah Mitchell. Double B Studio, thank you again for the super chat. Says, does Jimmy G show up to training camp? I don't think he shows up to training camp. I think the 49ers should try to bring him back, but I don't think he's going to show up unless he has a new contract. It's not going to be a situation where he's going to cause any kind of a problem or anything like that. But I just don't see him showing up unless there's a deal in place. They're going to have him rehabbing on the side, have him doing all those types of things, but I just don't see him being there at camp. Thank you very much for that, Double B. And then like 916 49er says, hit that like button, faithful. Yes, please. If you could do that, that'd be greatly appreciated. Next one, we have Bay Area Baller 18. I like me some Kevin Givens with so many bodies. What are the odds he makes a team? I think that Givens, if you missed a Bay Area Baller at the beginning of the show, I actually have Kevin Givens making the roster. I had him at the back end of it. So Kevin Givens, I do think makes the roster. He's a solid interior pass rusher, decent against the run. So I think he's going to make it on the roster for sure. That's my guess. All right, now that's transition. We've hit all the way through. Now we got to get to the safeties. I'll wrap it all up at the end with all of the spots. But at the safety position, this one's a little bit easier. There's not a whole lot there. They have Tavarius Moore, Jimmy Ward, Taylor Hawkins, Hufanga O'Neal Jr., George Odom, and Quantrez Knight. When you look at the guys on the 49ers roster, the interesting piece here is that outside of Moore, Ward, Hufanga, and George Odom, the rest of these guys are undrafted free agents. So, you look at the safety position, the only real question here is going to be Talanoa Hufanga. He's first in line to replace Jaquiski Tartt. At least that's the way it's looked all throughout OTAs and minicamp. Fryers can't, he was solid in the 2 games that he started alongside Jimmy Ward last year. Those were victories at Chicago and against the Rams at home. They came out on each, like I said, they won both of those games. Ward recorded his only 2 interceptions in that Rams game. San Francisco has several of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. Mentioned that earlier with the pass rush, and they're going to need this new safety combination to be on point as well. You look at Hufanga. This is the guy who showed growth throughout last year. So much so that Jimmy Ward didn't even realize that he was only he started 3 games. He thought he was out there with them all the time. When you look at the safety room, Tarvarius Moore, this is a guy who missed all of last season with the torn Achilles. And the interesting piece when you look at Tarvarius Moore is even when he's been healthy, this is a guy who struggled really with angles. That's his whole thing. Is his pursuit angles. He's solid at times in coverage, but he's really tough hit. He struggles and runs as a run support with taking the proper angles, and sometimes they're given a bigger play as a result. That's one of the biggest differences with Jimmy Ward out there. And like I mentioned already, if any of these guys, if any of the top 4 safeties don't work out, San Francisco is going to have to turn to one of these 3 undrafted rookie free agents that they have on their roster that they signed this offseason. Either that, or they're going to have to be bringing in a free agent. So it's going to be a tough one for them there. And so I think that makes it pretty easy to see how my 53-man roster is going to look. It's going to be 4 safeties with Jimmy Ward, Talanoa Hufanga, Tarvarius Moore, and George Odom. George Odom being the free agent signing from Indianapolis. They brought him over. He started about 7 games last year for Indy. He's a good player, and he'll be a solid special teams contributor, but he's also going to be a good backup player as far as the defense goes out in the secondary. Let's see really quick. Let's go through it one more time, just so anybody that's missed, we're going to go through the full 53-man roster in terms of the defensive side. I had the way that when I broke down, it just happened to be this way. I have 25 players on offense, 25 on defense. The 25 on defense start with the defensive line: Bosa, Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, Samson Ebukam, Kerry Hyder, Hassan Ridgeway, Kamoka Ture, Charles Omenihu, Drake Jackson, and Kevin Givens. And then we transition from there to the linebackers, where you have 5. You have Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Azeez Alshire, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, and Oren Burks. At the cornerback spot, 7 of those, which are Tarvarius Ward leading the way, Emmanuel Mosley, Ambry Thomas, Diamador Lenore, Tariq Castrofield, the rookie from Penn State, Darquez Denard in the slot, Samuel Womack, Jason Verrett, like I mentioned earlier, being on the PUP list to start off with. And then at safety, you have 4 of those, Jimmy Ward, Talanoa Hufanga, Tarvarius Moore, and George Odom. Fun part about this is we're going to be able to see how well I did at predicting this really quick, because they're going to be coming to camp on Tuesday. The report Wednesday is the first day on the field, the first practices. So it's going to be we're right there. The season's just around the corner, more so than ever. have a couple of questions here really quick I want to hit up. We have Bomber T. He says, what's your thought on Deebo and the Niners not agreeing to a contract extension yet? The way I see this is, it's the way it happens with the 49ers all the time. And I think that the situation here, I think this is a contract extension will get done. It'll be probably, next week or early on in training camp that this extension for Deebo Samuel gets done. I don't think it's going to be something that goes along too far. I think if it lasts, I think if they're really pushing their luck if they don't get a contract extension done with Deebo Samuel, because I think if they go that direction, that would be a really tough deal for the 49ers and for Deebo, because Deebo Samuel, he's got to play and to get his next big contract somewhere else. But at the same time, you kind of want to keep your guys happy. And I think Deebo Samuel's earned the contract extension that he's going to get this offseason, or when he gets it here in the next week or two. So there's the 53-man roster. Like I said, there's the video from last week has the offense. This one has your defense. Did not include the special teams, but you know that the long snapper is going to be Tabor Pepper. The punter will be Mitch Wishnowsky, and the field goal kicker is the kicker will be, Robbie Gould will be the kicker. So we've got a full 53-man roster right there. There might be, as usually, there's usually one or two guys who sneaks onto the roster. So it's going to be fun to see how that plays out over the next month. So want to just take a quick second to thank all of you for taking the time to check out the video. If you liked what you saw, please hit that subscribe button, and would really appreciate all the subscribers that we can get. And then also hit that like button. Hitting the like button is important because that helps with the algorithms that YouTube uses to help get this information out in front of more and more folks. So please hit that like button. Please hit the subscribe button. And if you're doing subscribing for the first time, also hit the little bell notification so you know every time we go live, especially with training camp coming up. I'll be going live, doing my regular shows on Monday and Tuesday, but starting Wednesday, I will be doing the practice reports, and it's going to be the schedule is going to be a little bit different on a regular basis as far as during the month of August with all the training camp and stuff like that. So keep it locked into the channel. A lot of good things coming. Appreciate everybody for checking this out. Like, subscribe, and I will be back soon. I will be back actually tomorrow night with Silverio Sunil on Monday night for the 49ers Throwback Show. We'll be going into training camp a little bit, also talking a little bit about the 1994 49ers. So thank you all for checking out the show. Appreciate all of you. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be with you soon. Take care, everybody.